Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Shayda Campbell and today I have a little treat for you. So right now Chris and I are staying in this cottage just outside of Paris, France, and I want to share that with you. So I'm going to sit by the window and do a little watercolor painting. I'm going to try to keep this painting as close to real time as I possibly can so that you can follow along with the brush strokes and listen to the sounds of the garden, and we're just going to relax, and I hope you'll really enjoy being here and spending an afternoon with me. I'm starting this afternoon by mixing my paints on my porcelain palette. Now, my floral image today is going to be all purples and greens, so those are the colors I'm mixing. I've got some sap green here, and I'll add a little bit of cadmium red. I love mixing green into my red to sort of darken it and deepen it a little. I've also used hooker's green and raw umber. And then my paint brushes, I am using some larger round brushes, and let me show you, when you pull the body of a large brush or the belly of a large brush like this over the page, you just get these wonderful shapes, and then you can lighten up the pressure a little, use the tip of that brush to add details, and those movements are so important when you're painting flowers and leaves. Now I'm going to put some water into my paints here. I'll mix the hooker's green and sap green together with lots of water to get a nice depth of color, and then I'm going to wash my brush. And then I'll go back and get a little bit of that cadmium red. And you'll see in a sec here, when I mix in the red into the green, because they're opposite on the color wheel, it adds a real darkness and depth to the color. Red and green cancel each other out. If you put equal amounts, you'll get like a muddy brown, but just adding a little bit, it gives a more sophisticated green, I think. A very natural green, actually. And then I'm going to mix up a green that's just a little darker. I'll use more of that hooker's green. I'll use a little bit of raw umber. I might even mix a little purple into that one. And then of course I'm going to mix up a nice rich purple to use for my flower petals. So when I start painting, I have all my paints mixed up with lots of water and they're ready to go. And you're going to see me begin to paint here. I didn't have quite enough paint on the brush, but I went back in, got a little extra paint, and then I am just dragging the belly of the brush across the page. I can use the tip to add details, as I said, and I just try not to overwork these shapes. I'm going to make 4 or 5 shapes here, and we're going to call each of them a petal. And when I get all of them together, then we've got a flower. So I'm trying my best not to overwork these paints and to just let the watercolors seep out onto the page. I love just sort of watching what they do. I'm using hot pressed paper today, and I just love the way that hot pressed paper doesn't absorb as much water. It's not as dense, it's not as toothy, so it cannot take on as much water, but the effect that you get from the hot pressed paper, because of that, is really beautiful. The paint tends to just sit there, and it's dark in some areas and quite light in others. So it's very, very interesting, and it's very out of the artist's control. At least it's out of my control, and I love that. And I'm just continuing to paint these purple petals and create flowers. I don't think the first flower was as successful as the others. The paint, I had a lot of paint in my brush and I wasn't quite in control of it, but I'm really into not working backwards lately. If one flower isn't as good as the others, that's okay. Nobody is going to notice that at the end of the piece. And I am using a little bit of a smaller brush now to come in and start painting some leaves. I love painting leaves in 2 large strokes of the brush. And if you place those strokes just right, you'll get a beautiful line of negative space down the middle of the leaf. And it, of course, just looks like a little veining, a little detail on the leaves. And it's a nice design element, and it's a really fun way to paint. As I paint the leaves, I'm thinking about making some smaller and some larger. I am using both colors of green, so of course I had that lighter green and then the darker green. So just changing things up a little bit as far as size and color and shape of the leaves. Those details and design choices really help to add to the overall feel and look of the piece. With watercolors, you can always add more water to the paint so that some of the color is quite bright and saturated, whereas other parts of the piece might be a little lighter. So just by adding extra water, you can change up the color of your green or your purple. I am a watercolor artist who definitely loves to add a lot of water to my watercolors. I love those very light, translucent pastel hues. That's just what I'm drawn to. Painting these flowers and leaves is a wonderful way to practice your brush work, to practice your brush strokes, and really start to get comfortable having that brush in your hand and using it. Remember, we're using the tip of the brush to add detail, and we're using the belly of the brush, the part that holds all the paint, to drag it across the page and create the shapes of the flowers and the leaves. If you're wondering, the hot press paper that I'm using today is from Canson. It is a block, which means it's stretched, and it is 23 by 31 centimeters, about 9 by 12 inches. So that's the size that I'm working on today, and I'm basically just having fun painting until I fill in the entire surface of the page. And then as I am at that point where I've got a lot of elements here, I decide to add some berries, and that is another fun little element that you might paint as well. It just is one more color that you can add to the piece. I did sort of a burgundy purpley color, and it's just one more element that you can use to bring your piece to life. And then I'm going to use that same burgundy color to go back in and start adding stamens to all of the flowers. And I just do sort of a loose stippling effect, or maybe some little lines. It's very, very free and perfectly imperfect. These flowers and leaves are somewhat abstracted. It is just all about the brushwork today and just enjoying our time painting. And then the very last thing that I'm going to do is come back in with some more green, a little bit more of an opaque green, and just add some veining to some of these leaves. And then I am all done. I think this piece turned out absolutely lovely, but it really was all about the process of painting and sitting by the window in the sun and listening to the sounds of the garden and not worrying too much about getting it right, but just enjoying the process and the feel of the brush in your hand and the sounds of the birds chirping. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed being in my French garden with me, and I will see you soon with a new tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe.